Welcome to We Have Spoken, Season 2, Episode 7. This is the podcast discussing our favorite Star Wars show, The Mandalorian, airing on Disney Plus exclusively. In this episode, we'll be discussing Chapter 15, The Believer, written and directed by Rick Famuyiwa. It aired on December 11th, 2020, and we are recording on that same day. My name is Dennis, and I'll be your generic space pirate for this journey. With me, as always, is my prequel apologist, Ricky. Welcome, Ricky.
Hi, guys.
This episode, Ricky, I'm pretty happy about this one.
This was a good one, man.
Yeah, we need to get talking about it soon, which means I got to introduce our special guest for the day. So happy to have this person. I worked with him for a while back in my glory days. He's become a professional stand-up comedian, and he's also the host of his own podcast, which is the Uncommon Comedy Podcast. Please welcome Brian Apprille.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. And I just want to say real quickly before we begin, I am so excited to be on the show, the We Have Spoken podcast. I want to make sure I get that proper. Because I have been watching this show since I was a kid, and it's always been a dream of mine to be on here. So I am excited. I am ready. It's like I'm meeting celebrities here. This is great.
Oh,
Let's
man.
do this.
I didn't know I had fans in the womb.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm kind of worried you might have been watching somebody else's podcast, but I appreciate that all the same. Thank you for being here.
What gets you, Brian? What gets you going in Star Wars? What does Star Wars mean to Brian?
Oh my gosh, what does Star Wars mean to me? This franchise has been, I've walked along with this franchise since I was a little kid.
Just like our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I watched it at the same time, and I was so excited to be a part of it. It was. I love the Ewok retrospective, by the way, when you guys did that back in 1984. That was phenomenal.
Yes.
That was really, really good. So I, as a kid, Star Wars was just it's everything. I mean, you guys know it's visually, it's beautiful. The stories, the characters, the good, the evil. I remember seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater. I think it was 13 times as a kid. And
oh my gosh!
Wow.
Yeah. So like back then, that's a lot. You know, that was before people like really nerded out into doing, going to see it over and over and over again. So I just remember absolutely just being in love with the landscapes and the characters. And I know you guys talked about Boba Fett a lot last week. I was a big Boba Fett fan. And then obviously somewhere along the way, I kind of switched to the dark side, and I went Palpatine, Vader, and just so much love for all of that. And you can see my special little home that I have here.
I'm pretty sure you do a pretty mean Palpatine impersonation too, don't you?
I like to do that. I like to what I've been doing during quarantine is I will find something and just read the label as Palpatine. So let me do that real quick if you want. I'll just do it real quick. Why not? Gotta get my old man glasses on. So we have some Purine things.
When you see signature swirl found only on Purine rolled wafers, you know that you and your family will enjoy the same high-quality ingredients and delicious flaky taste that we have made here in America for generations.
That was awesome.
I feel like Palpatine's voice is just like good in like short spurts, but like with the new movies, it kind of like I guess alludes to that Palpatine had the bone to make some clone babies, right? Like, so like, is his voice always like that?
Hello, ladies.
Like,
is that just how his go-to pickup is? Like,
I think he has different personas that he presents to people.
Yeah,
I think that's the actual canon of it.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, Star Wars has been such a huge part of my life, and to see the progression, I'm not a big fan of the prequels, and but you know, whatever. To each their own. And the last few I've had some issues with, and just kind of what they did with Luke and all that sort of stuff. But absolutely love the world, and it's been such a tremendous gift and such a big part of my life. And I can't. Gosh, a life without Star Wars, man. That's a terrible life.
Yeah, I tried it for a while, and it was weird. It got a little dark. Brian, I schedule these guests weeks in advance. I obviously do not work for Disney. I don't know the scripts, but I've had this amazing what producer Lindsay, which by the way I forgot to introduce. Thank you for bringing balance to the force. She pointed out like how serendipitous these last few weeks have been, right? Because like it just turned out really fortunate that on the episode with Ahsoka Tano, I had her on the show because it's really nice to have a female voice there to speak about that. A strong female character showing up. And then last week, we had Boba Fett, and then we had the Dark Troopers, and we had Travis, who's probably one of the biggest Boba Fett fans ever, and Clark, who loves the video games, to talk specifically about those things. And so this week, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but like I got so happy, not just from the episode, but from knowing that I was going to be recording later that day with Brian on the show. And it's just, man, it almost seems like whoever's booking these people is just like super smart or something, So I'm really excited to talk about this one. So before we get into spoiling why I'm so excited to have Brian on the show, let's briefly talk about what your feelings were on the show.
Okay, sure. I thought it was for me it was a really interesting episode. It didn't. I actually, I know you guys have talked about this before. I kind of like the shorter episodes because you get right into it. Like there's no real.
This was a quickie for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely a fast one, and so it just got right into the action, and just bing bang boom, kind of just you get your pop that you need from it, and it didn't necessarily advance the plot too much, but it set up the way that it ended for me anyway, got me really excited for what's coming up. Like it's just like you can feel the build coming, and this felt like a good build episode for what's to come the last part of the season.
Well, before we move on to the spoilers, I just wanted to just point out just how lucky we are to have Brian on the show. I mean, I mentioned that he has his own podcast, but this is actually the first time he's been on screen for a few weeks now because, Brian, why don't you tell people where you've been?
So the short version is 11 years ago, I got sick with this thing called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, and I ended up with facial paralysis. And when my nerves started to rewire and heal, they rewired incorrectly. So I got this weird pulling and all these sorts of things with my face, and a lot of pain and all that sort of stuff. And about a month ago yesterday, I ended up getting facial paralysis correction surgery, which has gone very, it's been a massive success, and I am pain-free for the first time in 12 years, and my face is healing, and it's still, a little messed up, but things are moving. I can smile a little bit more than I used to. I'm having range of motion and facial muscles and eyebrows, and things are coming back, and it's been one of the most amazing months of my life just to see all this stuff kind of start to come back together. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that was the other reason I was super excited to have you today, because like I knew that this is the Brian episode in so many cool ways, and I was so happy. So I think you look great, and I'm ready to talk. Let's talk more Star Wars for the rest.
Let's get into it.
All right, we're gonna do spoilers for anybody who didn't watch the episode before coming here. You're sweethearts. Please go away. or just accept the fact that we're going to say a lot of weird things that don't make any sense for like the next 45 minutes or an hour or so. All right. I am going to tell you guys my super one sentence summary of this episode, and you let me know what you think, and then we'll move into that light side, dark side area. I think this episode is the one where Mando and Mayfeld reunite for another heist that goes incredibly off the rails.
I wouldn't call it a heist, would you?
Yeah, it was literally more of a heist than the last time. Actually, they actually went to acquire a thing,
Sure,
as opposed to a person, which was, I guess, technically when they did this last season, it was more of a breakout, right? Like it was a
Right.
But I mean, that's just a heist with a person.
it was an excuse to bring back Bill Burr. That's all it was.
I was so happy. I was so happy. But like I said, I was really happy to have Brian on, and I think we're just gonna get right into this light side, dark side because I have a stand-up comedian on the episode where the prominent character in the episode of the show was a stand-up comedian who I happen to love. So Brian, what was your thought for having Bill Burr back?
I was, well, like you, when I was watching last night and I saw Bill Burr was on, I was like, oh, this is going to be perfect. It's really interesting because I am a big Bill Burr fan. I know some people may or may not know him. I started in Boston and I actually performed with him before he became famous. So back in the day. So I've always loved Bill Burr. It was a little weird for me. And I just thought, like, how awesome is that when I saw him, like being in Star Wars, in The Mandalorian, especially, when the prisoner episode, I thought, oh, that was cool. And then they brought him back. I was like, how cool is that to have, this, you're not in this world at all. And then they pull you in for 2 episodes, which, by the way, I am available. If you need another stand-up comedian, with bald, I shave my head. We'll take care of all that. It was really interesting because as a stand-up comedian, to watch that and to know Bill Burr as well as I do as far as his material, it was hard for me to get into him a little bit as his character, as Mayfeld, and all I hear is Bill Burr.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I hear Bill Burr. It's a very strange thing. And then the way that they do comedy traditionally within the Star Wars world is it's generally almost all physical. So whether that's the use of Jar Jar Binks, getting his foot stuck in one of the robots, flying around, blasting things, whether that's R2D2, getting electrocuted, or Yoda banging on him with a stick, or any of those sort of things, or C-3PO. It's all very comic relief, and it's all just kind of interrupting. And then you take Bill Burr, and you take Han Solo's personality, that wise guy personality, and you turn it up to like 1,000. Because like Han Solo was always just, snapping the little one-liners here, laugh it up, fuzzball, and, all the little things, but it wasn't constant. Where Bill Burr, it's like him being on stage reacting to everything. So it was really, really interesting for me to see that, and to see how they kind of wrote in some comedy in a very, very different style than they normally do throughout any of the other, movies or shows that I've seen. So that was my first thing. What did you guys think of that?
like on paper, it shouldn't work, right? And the fact that they brought him in, I mean, twice now, and he's not playing Bill Burr, if that makes sense. He's definitely still himself, but it doesn't take away out of that episode at all. Like if you would have brought in anyone else, like a Seth Rogen, some other iconic comedian, you kind of would have been pulled out of that world a little bit, I feel like. But for him, it just works so well with the character that they wrote for him.
I think on paper it does work, and I think the reason is that you're seeing it differently is because you're seeing him as Bill Burr, the comedian. But if you think about why Bill Burr has been successful as a comedian, if you watch him, like, he's the everyman, right? That's what he's doing. Like he's somebody that people relate to, right? And I think what Brian said earlier is so true. Is that he's the new Han Solo. He is a Han Solo that this generation can relate to, right? Because he's
Slightly
really
Mandalorian racist.
I mean, hey, well, here's the thing. Here's my whole thing with Han Solo. When the original movies came out, there was an understanding that before they hired Han Solo to take them to, which I think they were going to Alderaan originally.
Yep.
He was a bad guy. he was a really bad guy. And in fact, he was a bad guy up to 5 minutes before they sat down at the table with him, because he just straight up murdered Greedo.
Murdered a dude he swindled.
Yes, murdered a dude he swindled, right? While working for Jabba the Hutt. So he's done a series of horribly bad things. And I don't like that over the generations, they've taken his history and kind of softened it and made him less and less of a rogue. You know, the different versions of the special editions have made it so, oh no, Han didn't shoot first anymore, or like let's not talk about the spice running, you know, when he talks about the Kessel Run and stuff. And I'm like, bro, you're a drug runner. That's what spice is. Spice is drugs.
Well, you
in
can't
Star
put
Wars.
drug runner on the toy.
Exactly. And so my point is, yes, we make fun of the fact that Mayfeld, not Bill Burr. I'm not calling Bill Burr a racist. I don't know him enough to know. But Miggs Mayfeld he's kind of a racist character. He's got rough edges, right? Mm-hmm. But what's cool is that's fine, because I think Dave Filoni is going to take this character, maybe one episode every season, he'll come back and we'll get a little bit more, like just like we did this week, right? We got more of him, and now we kind of understand why he's rough around the edges and why he hates the Empire so much too, right? Like, we got that whole story in this episode, and suddenly we're just like, oh, you're not that bad.
Like, but in the span of 10 minutes, you just like totally do a 180 on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but here's the difference though. When he killed a guy in cold blood, we loved it, right? Because that was unquestionably deserved. Whereas, like, we don't even know if Greedo has a family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't even know what Greedo's deal is. Like, it wasn't fair as the audience. But like this time, we got to know that man he shot was a pretty bad guy.
Well, and just real quick to touch back on the comedy side and the psychological side of comedy, what they're doing with Bill Burr, and I think why he relates so well, is he's saying what everyone's thinking.
Yes.
Where a lot of characters do not say that stuff out loud, he is saying those things out loud, which as a comedian, that will bring the laughter and the effect of people connecting, because you have the guts to say what it is you're saying at all times, whether it's just with the prison guard droid, what do you want now, or whether it's
they totally get into that when he starts like questioning Mando on his religion, like, well, is it, can you take off the helmet or you can't show your face? Like, we're all kind of wondering it.
He's literally on a show called The Mandalorian, and he refers to the Mandalorians as you people. Like,
how much of that though did you feel was just kind of a build up to for the reveal of him having to take the helmet off at the access terminal?
I think it can serve two purposes, right? Because you've been watching the whole season of the show, right? And so, like, ever since he met Bo-Katan, he's learned that his way is not the way. It's
the only way, I guess.
It's a way. Yes, it's not the only way, right? And anybody who's followed the old cartoons knows Bo-Katan's not somebody that's going to be on the side of wrong anymore. So she's a good guy. She's a heroine character, and so it created that split in him, right? Where he's now, the rest of the season, he's questioning, well, when do I do it? And so I think Bill Burr is just the perfect timing, or Mayfeld, because when he starts bringing up that point about, everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy, And I think that was the perfect description for Mayfeld, and it's also the perfect description for Han Solo back in the day, So I think it can do two purposes. It can feed the larger story that we've been seeing this season, where Din Djarin is totally questioning his faith, or whatever you want to call it, his belief. There's no coincidence that the episode was called The Believer, right? Because that's him. He's the one who's now questioning his belief system. But also, it served as that great setup to that moment you were talking about at the access terminal, that was intense. That was so much more intense than when he took his mask off last season. Like, I was like, oh man, he is making some moral sacrifices right now. But also that goes to show, like, that leans into like the other thing that's been growing this whole season is his love for Grogu, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
He's a full-on dad now, like Travis said last week. That's fatherhood, man. The things he was willing to do. He sacrificed his principles to save this kid, and he's realizing those principles don't really matter as long as the safety of Grogu, is handled first.
I think it's that as we talk about this, we're just kind of going through. I think that's going to be the interesting part of that is, and you're not only seeing the gray areas of principles with him, but you're seeing with everybody really. You saw it with Mayfeld, where you said that in that 10 minutes stretch, he went from kind of unlikable to rooting this dude on, shoot everybody. Mm-hmm. And then same with Gina Carano. Sorry, I just called her
Cara Dune.
Cara Dune. I just always go with that, Cara Dune. So, but like you've been seeing that where she twists her principles, and you can see that kind of coming. Where previously she's like, "Oh, these stripes mean different things," and now she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna bend some rules," and then at the end,
she's like, "I kind of think he's hot," right? Like by the end of that, like. She was pretty into Miggs Mayfeld at the end of that episode. I don't know if it was a romantic attraction or just like a mutual respect, but she's like,
"You just committed war crimes. I think you're sexy."
Right. She went from hating anyone in the Empire to saying, "Hey, maybe they're not all so bad," So like, yeah, they're all growing as characters.
He's basically a mirror of her season 1 character arc, right? Where she was kind of salty about the Republic, and now she's kind of leaning back. The thing I wanted to bring up, what triggered Bill Mayfeld, Operation Cinder, that was introduced in the game, wasn't it? That event, that's what happened. That's what happened when Palpatine died. That they were just scorching other planets. If I'm not mistaken.
It's possible that Operation Cinder exists. In other stories. I'll take your word for it. But yeah, this is the first appearance of Valen Hess, who was his commanding officer in that operation.
Another American accent officer.
Yeah, it was an American accent officer. They're changing our perceptions of the Empire in this show. Or maybe it's once the Empire fell, they just dropped the pretense and they're like, we don't have to speak with the British accents anymore. Like, who knows? But yeah, I did like that story. It was compelling. It got the point across that like, okay, now we're understanding why he was an ex-Imperial, and clearly he's resourceful enough to be the one survivor of his division, and he had a chip on his shoulder, and he finally was presented with the opportunity to ask his commanding officer, what's your take on that? And when the guy answered wrong, yeah, I knew that gun was coming out. Yeah. Which, by the way, his Imperial gun was quite effective in this episode, considering how much stormtroopers miss all the time. But most of his kills were about 1 foot away from the gun. So
that's how supposed to be. Wasn't he like billed as like this expert like marksman or whatever? In the prisoner?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
And he had the little,
the third gun, right? Yeah. That's right. That
the pause when he shot him was just so good from everyone. It's like,
the stupid stormtroopers that didn't know what they were supposed to do.
Oh my God. What would you do, right? Like you're just
yeah.
Why are stormtroopers like? How on Earth or on the planet in the universe did they ever take over anything with the lack of
I don't know
discipline, structure, technique?
I don't know, but it took me 2 rewatches on this episode to finally get Boba Fett's joke when they were trying to draw straws to see who would go with Miggs because they're gonna get their DNA scanned, and then Boba's like, I have a feeling they might recognize my face.
Oh, that was a good line.
I thought he was referring to the helmet, and then on the second viewing, I'm like, Oh, it's because he has the exact same face of the entire clone trooper army. I forgot about that, right? Like, and it, but the only reason I'm bringing that up is because, like, oh my God, the clone troopers were so much more effective at their job. Like, why did they get rid of them and
That shit's
replace them
expensive, man.
with regular ass people who suck at their job? They're so ineffective. I just don't understand it either. It's the worst. Like,
you could do a whole episode on how terrible stormtroopers are as far as a unit in a military.
So bad. By the way,
and they have helmets. Like, even going back to Return of the Jedi, Ewoks throwing the bolas and not hits the helmet,
yeah,
and they're out.
Rocks, yeah. So dumb.
Sorry.
I don't know. I can't spend more time on these stormtroopers. They're just
okay.
stupid. They're just I feel like that's been a recurring theme this entire season, is just the ineptitude of stormtroopers, and it's like, they're bad.
I mean,
they're
that's
really
the cornerstone of Star Wars right there.
But yeah. I will give them credit on this episode. I will give them credit. This was in my midichlorians for future, but when they finally were bringing the vehicle across the bridge, they finally came out and they just gunned down the rest of like the raiders that were coming in.
Again, wow, it was like point blank though, right? So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Also, it was like super overkill. They did an airstrike and then just like wiped out the rest of them. And
yes. Hey, that reminds me, and it kind of goes back to what Brian was saying about the gray area stuff. So I mean, yes, we understand that at this point, Din Djarin is driven, right? Mando is like, will do anything to get this kid back. It's basically his adopted son, right?
Yeah.
So I understand that. I'm all in. We know Din Djarin was a hired killer before this show ever started, right? So we're not questioning that he's got, some moral ambiguity and everything like that. But when those pirates or those raiders you were talking about showed up, I had a weird feeling about them, because, like, yes, I know pirates is a shorthand that we use a lot in Star Wars, like especially in the TV shows and stuff. Like, pirates are people that are gonna like raid your ship and steal your stuff and take off and kill you and all these things. Dude, let's be honest. Those guys were not pirates. Those were not pirates. Those were people dressed the exact same as the people in the village that were given the transport the Dirty Eye. And they just happened to show up after they passed through that village. And before they passed through the village, you see a bunch of other blown up Juggernaut transports that were carrying the Rhydonium, right? Mm-hmm. Those were people who want the Empire off their freaking planet, aka the Resistance or the Rebellion. Those were people that the Rebellion or the New Republic hasn't gotten to. So whatever planet wherever Morak is, this planet, it's still occupied by Imperial remnants, right? Which means the New Republic's not there. So these people are just fighting for their own freedom. Like, I've never seen a pirate try to blow up the loot they're trying to steal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, their goal was to put thermal detonators on the stuff. They weren't anarchists. They were trying to rid their planet of these Imperial people. So I'm just saying, I feel like that was a very Disney or like executive step in somewhere in there to say, like, let's call them pirates, because Din kills a lot of them, and it's kind of weird. But I'm just saying, like, that was weird for me, considering all the things they did with Migs through the whole episode. Why they weren't willing to commit to the fact that, like, yes, it's a case of mistaken identity, right? Like, they think those two guys are bad, and they're trying to blow them up. I don't think there's a problem with that. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
At the end of the day, you're murdering civilians, right? And they
were full on murdering civilians.
Yeah,
like a lot.
I mean, to its credit, though, this is probably one of the that whole sequence was one of the more violent, I think, Disney things we've seen in a while.
And I think that's why they're like, dude, there's guys getting run over by the car,
and you hear it.
Yeah. And I think
because you can't call them resistance because it's they're really playing with the whole ambiguity of right and wrong and morality this season, and that's just one really subtle nod to it, where again they're resistance fighters essentially trying to stop the Empire, and now you have your protagonist going off and everyone knows that the Empire is it's evil, and now he's kind of doing evil actions and just again assassinating and murdering all these poor people who just want peace.
And they were fighting him with sticks too. You know what I mean? Like, those ain't pirates, guys. Those are not pirates.
They gave Mando a plot device to not have a gun during that scene, so
which drove me crazy.
And he still super murdered them. Like, no, what are you talking about? He actually did have a gun. He shot
one.
Yeah, but he shot one, and then it ran out of bullets.
Yeah.
And then Mig said, "Why are you shooting a gun with a transport loaded with rhydonium?" It's fine. I just, as much as I love the episode, it pulled me out of it for a second. And I'm like, why'd you call them pirates? It didn't, like, I know who they are. Like, you clearly showed me who they are. So whatever. It's
the running out of bullets from the blaster kind of pulled me out. I was like, come on, like
that never happens,
forever.
Right? Yeah,
never. And all of a sudden, click, click, click. Like, it would have been better to maybe have someone knock it out of his hand, or something a little more. I don't know. I want to say realistic. I don't know. As we argue about a fantasy story about laser bullets.
I mean, back to the gray area thing. Like, even the Empire, you kind of get a little emotion for them, right? When they make it across the bridge and you see everyone cheering, and a lot of the stormtroopers have their masks off, and I mean, it humanizes them in a weird way.
Yeah, it was really weird to see that.
Shit, they're people too.
I loved it. I love seeing that. Like, it just
they had the mechanics there.
Yeah, you know what? It kind of reminded me of like Rogue One. You know how like you just start seeing the weird sacrifices that people have to make in order for their survival, and that was gross and fun too. Like, you could see them cheering because I have the subtitles on all the time, and they're like, "You're bringing glory to the Empire," and then one of them's like, "I can't believe they pulled it off," and it's like, no crap, because like you're freaking stormtroopers and you never pull anything off. So
yeah, it was very reminiscent of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, like all those victory celebrations that we're used to seeing from the Rebels.
Yeah,
that celebration at the end, and just so seeing that from the Empire side again, it just plays into that whole thing of like, they're people too, and there are multiple sides to the story, and
a lot of people have to believe in their cause for them to get that much power.
Yeah,
well, it's called The Believer. Yeah, but as a reminder, they're all dead.
Yes,
they all got blowed up. Every single person in there, except for the like two guys that hopped in their TIE fighters, but then they got blowed up too. So, oh well. So whatever you felt for those guys, too bad.
that was one of my midichlorians as they're peeling away from the base, and Boba Fett just goes straight up, and you see the two TIE fighters following behind him. Like, he's gonna drop the sonic bomb.
Yeah,
they didn't give it to us. Seismic bomb. They didn't give it to us last week. But oh man, that emptiness of sound, and then
I honestly didn't know he was gonna do it. He'd never done that before, until like Boba Fett's never done that. You know that, right?
Yes, Slave One has done it, but Boba Fett has not done it.
Yes. So I never know. Maybe he didn't do it because he ran out of seismic charges. Who knows? Like,
I mean, he has a bunch of those rockets left.
I don't know how this guy's fully stocked on everything. You know what I mean? But
he has paint apparently.
Exactly. The new gear. I always found it interesting, though. I think it's interesting to me to see where they go with the relationship between Mando and Boba Fett. And what sort of, because I just have a feeling they're gonna clash.
I mean,
I would be interested to see if that's where they go with that. And
at some point, there's a difference in principles for sure, right?
Yeah,
there will be. Yeah. What about the fatherhood angle for Din? I just really loved that, because you guys were talking about earlier how, stuff started like kicking in, like where Mig started as like, the guy just kind of dismissing everything in the beginning. I thought he actually came around really fast as soon as they got him on that ship, and Cara Dune said they've got his kid, and he said the little green guy, and he was suddenly right on board. And I thought that was really cool because that was a very human thing, and that was a very interesting thing that Cara Dune has observed now. Like she's not even questioning that is his kid, and Din did nothing to like argue with it either, right? And so just that whole episode is just like the determination in him, like the sacrifices he was willing to do, like I mentioned earlier, is like, man, he looked and felt so awkward with that helmet off, but you just could see in Pedro Pascal's face it's all for the kid. Everything he's doing is for the kid.
Do you think it's because that he's the child's gone now? Because up until this point, he's still on track to get this kid to someone who can teach him and hand him off. Versus now, we're kind of seeing him.
I don't think he's
shit,
there
anymore. I gotta get my kid back.
I don't think. Yeah, I think it's definitely shifted to that.
Yeah, I think especially in the previous episode when the Dark Troopers came in and like that whole battle, like you could see it kind of shifting when he was in his avatar, state, in his little, when he's in his avatar state, you could just see it in the beginning, and you could just see kind of the concern and the building and the caring, and then him trying to go and get him and trying to go to get him to save him. And I think for me, that's when it shifted in his mind of like, I got to take care of this guy.
I have to read a line to you because I had to write this one down so that I remember it. But you have something I want. You may think you have some idea of what you're in possession of, but you do not. Soon he will be back with me. He means more to me than you will ever know. Dude, when I first saw that scene, I was like, what the hell are you doing? You don't call the bad guy and let him know you're coming. You don't do that. That's
you had to sprinkle in some Star Wars into the Star Wars show.
But are you guys aware what they were referencing?
Oh yeah. That's he said it in the second to last episode, right? When they first meet, when they're holed up in the whatever the bar. That's what Moff Gideon says. Moff Gideon. Yes.
So this episode was the penultimate episode of this season, and that's how it ended. Coincidentally, or not coincidentally, the penultimate episode of last season, Moff Gideon stood outside the bar and said to them, "You have something I want." And almost verbatim, he changed it a little bit, and like obviously back in the day, Moff Gideon referred to Grogu as it rather than he. But I think that's a key differentiator, right? Like Moff Gideon sees Grogu as a thing to obtain, and Din sees him as this is my kid, So it was on the rewatch that I realized, because my thing is, in case you don't remember, that line was delivered by Moff Gideon, but while he's delivering that line, it's that epic moment where Queel is trying to race back to the Razor Crest with Grogu on the back. So for me, I forgot those lines, and because all I remember about that scene is Queel, like I didn't, because that was my favorite character last season, and so I just completely forgot. And it wasn't until I was rewatching the episode and I noticed in the recap they specifically show Moff Gideon deliver those lines. And then suddenly I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not mad that you called the bad guy, because that's pretty bomb that you remembered word for word everything he said to you. I guess you would if you were going to almost die, right? But also, I'm just going to trust that the Mandalorian actually knows what the hell he's going to do next week. So
he's gonna get Bo-Katan and go get him, right?
I thought it was.
Who knows?
I thought it was like a Taken, it's like those iconic moments like in Taken,
Yeah.
I don't know who you are, like that sort of thing. And when that scene happened, I got so fired up. I was like, okay, this is good. But then that happened, and I was like, Jimmy, I am ready. Let's go. I don't want to wait a week. Like that just got me so fired up because, and again, I think it's gonna trigger that Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader sort of like evil push because of love, going evil out of love. I'm curious to see if that's where they're going to go with it, what he's going to do. Because, I mean, he's like you said, he's kind of morally shady anyway. But to see now that he's got purpose and he is driven and has emotion behind it, like what's that going to do to that character? I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Do you have any more things that you guys wanted to talk about before we move on?
I mean, it was a tight show. Like, the plot wise, the thing they know where Moff Gideon is, right? Not a lot of story happened aside from that, except for Mayfield, 180, but there's not like bigger Mando picture stuff.
I think what I've started realizing is because we keep coming back to that every week, even though sometimes we talk for like hours. But we say not a lot of story happened. But I think what it really is I think they've really keyed in on that Star Wars secret sauce, which is just do the story that needs to happen and then surround it with tons of Star Wars. Do you know what I mean?
It's a very personal story. It's not the galaxy's in trouble, the light side versus the dark side. It's a very
but that's what brings us in, right? Yeah, that's what
it can breathe.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is what this show has done is, like I've always mentioned in the past, it's not necessarily a brag. It's sometimes more of a complaint when I watch an episode and then I'm like, okay, so Bo-Katan just showed up, and so that I would bone up, I went and watched every freaking episode with Bo-Katan in it, and I'm really tired because it was like 15 hours, not really 15 hours, but I think what's interesting in these last few weeks is I haven't had to do that. You know what I did? I was like, I guess I'm just gonna go watch Bill Burr comedy specials, which gave me like no context into this episode at all, but it did help me, talk more about like him as a comedian and how interesting it is. But I think there's a reason for that, and it's really beautiful. Is that this show is starting to build its own lore, and it's starting to create its own little world that is isolated to just this. So
slice of Star Wars.
Yeah. So something I noticed that was really cool and really subtle, but the beginning of the episode started with us seeing more of those crane walkers that were in the episode where he got his shit pulled out of the water. Right. That was the first time we'd ever seen those, and now we're seeing multiples of them, and they're being utilized all over the place. So they're creating their own little consistency in their universe. Like the other one is like Dank Ferrick. They love using that swear word all the time, but that's a swear word that's just inside the Mandalorian show. You know what I mean? I've never heard that swear outside of that show. Yeah, it's and like another thing that they're doing is like I really appreciated that speech that Valen gave, when he was talking about why the people will welcome the Empire back into their arms. Like if you think about it, pre-Mandalorian, pre this show, the rule was always Death Star number 2 blew up, Empire lost, the end, right? That we just accepted that since 1983, right? Empire lost. They freaking suck. They spent so many billions and trillions of dollars on that second Death Star there that like they're not coming back from that. But what the Mandalorian is doing is giving us its own version of that story and saying, well, actually, there's the remnants, and they're pretty confident that they're going to come back like any day now, And so,
and I mean, the outcome of the bigger picture, right?
Well,
of this
no,
whole
and that's what I'm saying is I'm beginning to wonder if it's separate. I'm beginning to start seeing this as like maybe the First Order isn't these remnants. You know what I
thing.
mean? Maybe the remnants are the people that are isolated to this show or the shows that are in this specific time period, and they become the enemy that has to be taken down before the First Order comes around. Do you know what I mean? I think we've been trying so hard to connect all the pieces that
Mhm.
we're not allowing them to breathe. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is this show is starting to just breathe on its own and it's relying less and less and less on old stuff that we know. I mean, obviously there's Boba Fett and but like
Yeah.
but even with Boba Fett, I found myself way more excited to see him this time because he got the new paint job and he was just ready to go. He was ready to do his thing, and it just felt like okay. Like I said last week, I wasn't happy seeing that Boba Fett because he wasn't my Boba Fett. But I challenged the creators to make a new Boba Fett that I enjoy. And they started doing that, right? They started taking the steps to say, let us just do our own thing here in this space. And so that's what I really loved about this episode is it was just leaning so much into its own lore that I didn't have to do any research at all on this episode. Like,
well, and what's nice, Dennis, we talked about this a little bit offline. One of the things I'm really enjoying about the show is you're starting to see these new locales, like Morak. You see these new worlds. You see, again, I was never into the books or anything, so I couldn't tell you anything about the Twi'leks or Jawas or, the Sand People or any of that sort of stuff. So we're starting to see these little pockets of these characters that we've all come to know, and through the Star Wars and the movies and everything we've had before, and now we're starting to get like more of a glimpse into their lives, their world, and again, it just makes it. You said it perfectly. It gets to breathe a little bit more. You get to see these other lands. You get to see these other cultures. You get to see these other beings that you go, oh, I remember that guy, like from when they were the two creatures that I always just remember from Jabba's palace that were doing the sword. They were
oh, the Gamorreans, the Gamorreans.
Yeah, the Gamorreans. Yeah, they were just fighting to the death for entertainment. So like you start to see those, and you start to see other things, and it's a little bit of fan service, but it's cool because now it's like okay, now they're more than just these space mutants. They have personalities and they have backstories and they have lives, and it's I really enjoyed what they've been doing with it. So that was one of the other things I took away from this episode. It's just more new worlds and locations.
Yeah, because I think as kids, that's what we loved about Star Wars, right? It's just like, what's that? What is that? You're just constantly looking at everything and like, I need to know more about that. And then George Lucas really never gave us the answer to so many of those questions, right? Like, no, it's not. It's not. But with that, I think we should just move on because now I'm getting angry again. Let's talk about the little things that only matter to a select few people out there. But no, really, let's just talk about the things that were just a special joy to us that maybe most people didn't notice or just might not care about or things like that. What do you go first, Ricky?
Oh, so Slave One, which have they said that on the show yet? The name of the ship?
No, they never say the name in the movies. You know that, right?
Yeah.
No,
dude. You know them the same
that's
reason we do.
That's super weird.
Toys. It's all toys.
But the way that ship's designed, it lifts up and then it rotates and then it flies away.
Yeah.
That's such a shitty ship design. But they show you for the first time, like really the interior, like the common space, and you see the cockpit rotate inside. I'm like, all right, at least
I've seen that before somewhere.
It's not as like, oh, is he just like sitting upside down this whole time?
I think I've seen that in the toy, actually, maybe.
But I thought that was kind of neat that they acknowledge that weirdness of it.
I liked one of the things that I really liked was, and it's not particular to Star Wars, but I love the way they filmed the Juggernaut battle scene. It was just to me like a Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade, Indiana Jones, George Lucas.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I've never heard of that movie. I don't think that movie exists.
The Swinging Monkeys.
But it was just done in a very, it was filmed in that way. It just had that feel to it. So it kind of brought another world that I love into the picture. And it was just, complete with falling off, watching him get run over, all of those things. It was like you could almost put them two up against each other and you'd see the same bits.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, Mando's a lot like Indy, where he's a brawler, he's a badass, but he still gets, pushed around, beat around a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not like he's just duking it out. He stumbles, he falls, he struggles a bit.
Dude, every character is just based off a Harrison Ford character. That's all they're doing. Miggs is Han Solo, Mando's Indy. Let's go. Somebody's gonna be the guy from Patriot Games, and then you got an Air Force One somewhere in there, and
then Dr. Richard Kimball jumping off of a
well, they almost did. I actually got a hint of The Fugitive when they climbed out of the window and they looked down and and you see that whole thing. Oh man, I think we just figured out the code to this whole show.
It's all Harrison Ford.
They're just watching Harrison Ford stuff. Man.
But yeah, that really stuck out to me, and I really enjoyed that. It had the same kind of beats and
I said earlier that I somehow found myself liking Boba Fett so much more, and I know what it really was. That paint job was 100% accurate to the colors of the Kenner Star Wars toy.
Nice.
And when I saw him, I was like, that's the Boba Fett I had as a kid and literally still have today somewhere. I tried to find it before we recorded. It's somewhere in my house. But those really bright colors that just never matched what you saw on the screen. But they were, simpler.
I thought of that they definitely, they're like, we have to sell more toys. So we have a Boba Fett in the scuffed armor. We have the new paint armor. We have a Mando figure in the Stormtrooper costume. Yeah. Also, one of my biggest gripes of Star Wars was like in Rogue One, you saw the new, I guess they are tank troopers, the tan ones that had the same helmets from this episode. It's like you never saw those dudes in the shore troopers. But you never saw them in the other series. It's like they're just totally created to make a toy.
Well, I mean, what about the droids, the stupid repair droids in the
it's the same stuff, same beat. So it's cool to see a medley of everything that fits in canon wise here.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know if this took you guys out of it. One kind of plot thing that drove me crazy was when Medfield was in there and he was like, I can't go in there. That's my commanding officer. He'll recognize my face. You have a helmet.
I know, right?
You put on the helmet, dude, and go there and do your job. It's going to be a lot easier than,
I feel like the real answer was he left it in the car and then he didn't want to go back to get it because it was too far. And then he'd have to go back through all those people that were cheering and stuff. Like, it's too awkward. No, yeah. that was weird to me. And then like at the end, he's like, here's your helmet. I never saw your face. And it's like, okay, so you were carrying a helmet. Oh, it was Din's helmet, but
yeah.
Why did he stay on that planet? Like, I get he's free, or he's a good guy now, but like, hey, dude, look, you're wanted on that planet.
Hera is doing some gray area stuff. All right, so she's comfortable with saying, "Hey, look, this guy, I'm not taking him back to the prison, but like, I'm also not gonna give him a free ride." Okay, like that's a little too far. So you just accept that. We'll see him again next year, and he'll be awesomer. And every year he's gonna come back. It's just like all of Dave Filoni's greatest characters on the Clone Wars. Like he peppers them throughout the season. So you don't get like Cad Bane is awesome because you don't get a lot of Cad Bane in the show. Mm-hmm. But every time you do, they build on his character, and so it's like that for a lot of characters. In the best characters are the ones that you get sparingly.
I mean, you killed a lot of the people that live there. You killed a lot of the bad guys there.
And he did it without his helmet on the entire time.
I don't know At least take me somewhere else. Like
I have absolute confidence that he will be fine. Okay, like let's just move on past that one. We know, we know Migs Mayfeld is going to be fine, and that people will demand he comes back next year.
Yeah, he's going to be running like a bar or something in the when they see him next. He's going to have this place.
And you know what he's going to do? You know what he's going to say the next time he comes back?
Hey, yo, Mando.
Nope, not going to say that. He's going to say, "What's up, Brown Eyes?" That is his new name for the Mando, and I love that name so much. He is just to be clear, he is like one of very few people. He's like the only person alive that's seen Din with his mask off.
Yeah,
count Grogu, right?
Has Grogu seen it off or just lifted the?
He's seen that mouth.
That doesn't count. Everybody's got mouths. We all know that. Yeah.
I don't know. You're talking Star Wars. Not everyone has a mouth there.
He's seen those beautiful brown eyes. I'm just saying.
It's a weird stylistic choice for him with his religion to choose to have a mustache. it's groomed, right? Like he's obviously trimming it.
That might be the funniest thing you've said on this show. I did not think about that.
Whatever makes you feel good, but like,
why do you go to the trouble of maintaining a mustache if you're just gonna rock the helmet all the time? You either go beard or just shave it all, right? One of the two. It's one of the two.
This is the way.
That's a good point. Never thought about that.
Yeah, I think just the last thing for me was just the detonators, the randomness of the timing of when they would blow up. You know, as you were watching them go through for Juggernaut 3 and Juggernaut 4 or whatever, it was just like it always sounded instant, like blast, boom, you know, big explosion in the background. And then this was like, okay, we got it charged. It's sitting there for a while. You can have a sandwich.
They don't want to die in the process.
And then other times it was just like you throw it and it just blows up, and it's just it's like
that's true. Well,
there's a lot of those
different settings you can do on them for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't see that part where they prepped. They had a little meeting. You throw yours first, and
well, there's different button clicks you can do. I think that's in the old games, the Dark Forces games. Different ways to set them off. By the way, that does remind me though, like the fact that they were willing to die to blow up those ships, that tells me everything I need to know that they were not pirates. That is not, no. Those are people that are dying for a cause. Pirates are not willing to die for a cause, especially if the cause doesn't net them anything in the process. All right, I think it's before we wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about the fun stuff that Disney revealed yesterday in their investor meeting. They dumped a whole lot of prospective shows on us. As on the Star Wars front, man. Why don't you list them off, Ricky? They dropped a bunch of them.
So I'll start with the stuff. So stuff that we know that was always coming. The Bad Batch, the Clone Wars spinoff, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then the Cassian Andor show. Those are all live action. Those last two are live action. The new stuff, though, I guess the biggest ones would be the Ahsoka Tano show and the Rangers of the New Republic show, which are both Mandalorian spinoffs.
Yes.
So they're definitely doing some world building. I think we were talking about it on the Ahsoka episode for sure. Like, this is just basically the pilot. Like they're just getting you ready for Thrawn.
I honestly didn't see it coming. I didn't think it was gonna be that. I think I'm excited about that. I think my only hesitation is like I thought we were only doing this podcast 8 weeks a year. So like, dang.
We will not commit to shows for all of these.
Yeah. No, I don't want to commit to shows for all of these, but I do love me some Ahsoka Tano. That's all I'll say. I think for me, I will reserve my judgment and excitement, and just do me a favor and let me know as they announce which ones are produced by Jon Favreau, and then I will watch those ones. The ones that are not, I'm good without. Don't worry about it.
You're not interested in a droid story?
No.
Oh boy.
Starring R2D2 and C-3PO?
No.
Oh my gosh! Please tell me that.
No.
I would. I am probably in the minority, but I despise C-3PO. I think C-3PO,
I don't know how much of a minority that is.
I think he is the worst character in all of Star Wars ever. Worse than Jar Jar.
Wow.
Oh my gosh! And then I've despised him for so long. And in my comedy act, I used to have a bit about him, and nobody, it got laughs, but like people were like, "No, we like C-3PO." And then in the Rise of Skywalker, the first 45 minutes of that film is just C-3PO trolling the hell out of me with comic timing. He's just being the comic relief, and I was like,
he is so annoying in that movie.
I go back, I watch Empire, and I just get excited when he's about to go behind the door and get blasted. Like, I get like, it's like Christmas morning for me. I'm like, here we go, here comes the part.
Well, I'm just curious, as somebody who's really just a fan of the movies and stuff, all of the things that Ricky just listed off, what do any of those excite you?
The Obi-Wan might be interesting.
They also cast Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader.
Oh, see, anything with Vader, I'm in. You mentioned Vader, and
but it's Hayden Christensen.
That's true, but you're not going to see. Well,
I think the only reason they would cast him is because you're going to see his face.
Are they going to do the voice?
No way. If they do it right, it's when the helmet's on, it's James Earl Jones. Yeah,
it has to be.
But I'm assuming he's probably got moments where he's hanging out in his room and he takes the helmet off, because we know he does that. We've seen him do that before, so I assume they got Hayden to just come do that. And oh god, he's just such a bad
I'm down
actor.
to see more of Vader's castle. I thought that was cool. See him chilling there, all half of him.
Again, I don't know. Like, I feel like I need to be sold on these things. Like the ones that are actually Mando adjacent, I need to be sold less on. Like, if you're gonna continue threads that are set up in the Mandalorian on other shows, I'm down to watch those. But for me right now, that's my new Star Wars. Like, that's the Star Wars I can rely on. I can count on it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to I don't have to ever turn on the TV and be like, okay, what are we gonna see in this episode? No, I never feel that way. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's see what's happening today. So.
I guess the last nugget was that those Mando spinoffs there's some climactic event planned for all of them. So either a mini movie or a mini series, but
they're gonna blow up the third Death Star. That's what they're gonna do, and then at that point they break the bank on the ISB. Like, they're gone. There's no more Empire after that, and then that's when the creditors come in. They collect everything, and then they hold auctions, and then the guy like Snoke is like, I will buy these things.
Like the people buying Nazi memorabilia.
Yeah, exactly. and so, there's no guarantee that Palpatine, didn't go find a new group. So, just saying. We'll see what happens with those shows, but I think we should probably wrap this up. So, I really just want to know what you guys would give this episode a score of out of 10.
I would give it, for the action, I really liked it. I take some points off just for the incessant helmet talk. Like, you've never seen stormtroopers. You were one. You've never seen all these people with helmets. It was just incessant helmet talk, and just a little bit of some of the things that pulled me out of it. I would probably give it maybe like a 7.5.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm going 9.5. I really liked this one, man. It didn't overstay its welcome. You got the action where it needed to be. You got some great character moments. It was probably one of the best Mandalorian episodes to date, for sure, for me at least.
I'm actually going to agree, not on the score. I'm still going to give it a 9. I really love this episode because it just leaned into its own world, and it leaned into its own characters, and we just got a lot of that. I do feel that it was a little light on Cara Dune and Fennec Shand and Boba Fett. They were just kind of like there, like in the background. But I do know we'll get more of them. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9. It did really entertain the crap out of me, but I'm no Grogu. What are you gonna do?
That's their cash cow.
Yep.
I know, right?
I mean, I know I judged kind of harsh, but again, it was just one of those things where it was like I felt like it was good. There were things that I really liked, things I didn't like, but would I watch it again and be excited for that episode? Probably not, except for the last, the Taken scene, as we talked about before. So it's not something that I would sit there and go, oh, I can't wait to watch this one again because so much great stuff happened.
Not even the part where he guns down
I mean, that was I did like that. I did like that,
yeah. But or what about the awkward conversation in the transport where he's like making him question his entire belief system? Yeah, I found all of that really adorable. Yeah. But I think all good things come to an end, and I think we gotta wrap this one up. I do want to thank everybody for listening, and I want to thank you guys for being here to talk about Star Wars with us. I did want to give you guys a moment to just tell us where people can find you and what people can look forward to seeing you doing elsewhere, or just share whatever you want. Why don't you go first, Brian?
Okay. Thank you again for you guys for having me. I can be found on social media at Comedy Brian. That's COMEDYBRIAN. You can find me on Twitch. I stream multiple times a week on Twitch. And you can also check out my website, comedybrian.com. And you can find my Uncommon Comedy podcast, which I talk about stand-up comedy with comedians. That is the Uncommon Comedy podcast. That's available on all your audio platforms as well as YouTube. And one more shout out is I have a facial paralysis one for anyone out there who may have facial paralysis or visual difference. There's Unique Smiles Facial Paralysis podcast, which is also available on YouTube and all the audio podcasts as well.
What are you streaming on Twitch?
Sometimes I'll do stand-up comedy, like teaching stand-up comedy, breaking down stand-up comedy, why things work, psychological things like that. Sometimes we do joke writing, and then sometimes I'll just play games and drink a beer and be stupid. So it just it varies. At twitch.tv/comedybrian.
Nice. Ricky, you got
anything? I got nothing going on, man. Ricky the Nerd on Instagram. But
I thought you had some cool art to plug.
I actually, good reminder. You can see it back there. I got some more Mando sketch cards from Donut Machine.
This guy does not know how to sell himself or his friends.
Hey, I mean, I'm not getting paid for this plug, so.
That's true. We're not. Nobody's paying anybody for this, by the way.
But yes, if you want some awesome Mando arts, donut.machine at Instagram. Go check them.
And then, as always, you can find me, Dennis, at Denex Media. Mostly just playing with toys and talking about Star Wars on YouTube, Instagram, and a little bit on TikTok. I will get back to those toy videos. This Mando thing is quite the adventure we've gone on. But I've enjoyed it all the way. But yeah, anybody who wants to continue watching the stuff we put out here, like, subscribe, and follow, and who knows, we might have more shows to do with all the different Disney Plus things that got announced, or we might just die from exhaustion. Whatever. Brian, do you have any last characters that you want to send us off with before we go?
We'll go to a different world. We'll go Severus Snape from Harry Potter. Cross over there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to say thank you so much for listening and watching our podcast. Please tune in each and every week, like, subscribe, and all of that nonsense. And I will see you in the future.
That was excellent. I'm going to use that from now on every episode.
That's a new outro.
All right. I think it's time for us to say goodbye with our sign off. Here goes, guys. You have listened.
And we
have spoken.
Have spoken.